Hi, this is Sarit Switzer, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast, a podcast devoted to the teachings of Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi as recorded in his most famous work, the Tanya. My hope for this show is to make these teachings accessible and relatable to the average person, regardless of prior Jewish education or affiliation. The episodes follow the prescribed daily study portions and are meant to serve as practical lessons in how to live your life as your true self and develop an authentic and powerful relationship with your Creator. I have personally experienced the effects the study of this work has had on me, and I'm excited to share what I can of this knowledge with you. So please join me on this journey of learning, self-growth, and connection with your source. Hi, and welcome to the It Is Taught podcast. This is episode 507 for the 22nd of Nissan in a regular year. Today's episode relates to Achron Shel Pesach, the last day of Pesach, which is a Yom Tov, at least in Chutz La'aretz. So I am pre-recording this episode for your information. So I hope that you are having a wonderful Pesach if you're listening to this during Chol Hamoed, or that you had a wonderful Pesach if you're listening to this after the holiday. So today we're going to talk about this really core value in Jewish tradition, in Jewish law, called Pikuach Nefesh. Pikuach Nefesh literally means saving a life or preserving a life. And this is a really big principle in Judaism because we place such high importance on saving a Jewish life that there are many really important laws that are pushed aside in order to do this. For example, keeping Shabbos is a really good example of that. Shabbos is a very big precept in Judaism, as we all know. But yet, if a person's life is in danger, God forbid, and the only way to preserve their life the only way to save their life is by violating Shabbos, not only are we allowed to violate the Shabbos in that case, but in fact, we have an obligation to. And that's actually the way that we keep Shabbos, is by breaking the Shabbos in that instance to save their life. This comes up very often in the case of a woman in labor, a pregnant woman who goes into labor on Shabbos. In that case, she's allowed to be driven to the hospital. There's all kinds of laws of Shabbos that are allowed to be broken in order to make sure that her life is safe and that we preserve the safety of the unborn child. This idea of pikuach nefesh, this idea of valuing human life, applies in so many different instances in Judaism. One of the ways that it applies also is in the approach to suicide, where we see suicide not only as a tragedy, as something that should not happen because it's a very sad event, but it's actually something that's forbidden. It's actually something that is a very intense transgression and really, really frowned upon. And the same thing applies to euthanasia. So euthanasia is becoming more commonplace, unfortunately, in places like Europe, in Canada. It's actually, there's starting to be laws to make euthanasia more legal, more prevalent. And this is, Judaism really looks down upon this. This is not something that's allowed. We are not allowed to take a person's life, even if they're in this place of intense suffering, even if the person asks us to do so, we are not allowed to do this. Where it becomes a little bit more nuanced is how actively do we have to work towards maintaining a person's life, towards keeping them alive? Like, do we have to keep them hooked up to different machines, like to keep their oxygen flow, their heart, their blood flow moving properly? How active do we have to be in this process of keeping them alive? That's another question. But what we definitely are not allowed to do is we're not allowed to actively remove their life, actively take away their life. And at first, this might seem a little bit puzzling because we know that in many cultures, euthanasia and similar kinds of practices are actually seen as very compassionate practices, very nice practices. Like, you put somebody out of their suffering. This person, it's their life and they can do whatever they want with their life. And, we want to give them the utmost freedom to have freedom over how it is that they live and how it is that they die. And this is their life, my body, my choice. It goes into that abortion argument also, which is kind of a related topic in that way. And in Judaism, the reason why Judaism takes such stark opposition to this is because, as we'll see in today's section of Tanya, in Judaism, we come to recognize that our lives are not our own. It's not my life, my body, my choice. This is not your body, your choice. Your body, your life was given to you as a gift from God. You did not choose to be here. You did not create yourself. And that's something that we have to always keep in mind. This is like a basic level of awareness that every single Jew, really every person, should really cultivate within themselves, which is why there's this really essential prayer that we're going to be looking at in today's episode called the Elokai Neshama prayer that we say in the morning, which basically says, like, God, this soul that you have granted to me as a gift. We acknowledge this every morning, that the soul that we have, the life that we have, was given to us as a gift from God. And we live here in this life, and we do what we need to do in this life in accordance with God's wishes, because God wants us to be here. And then when the time comes, we will graciously, hopefully, give over this life back to God at the time that He so desires. Not at the time that we desire, but at the time that He so desires. And what we're going to be talking about in today's episode is about how this acknowledgement of our lives really not being our own, but really being God's lives, is something actually that we all do possess as Jews on some deep level inside of ourselves, whether some more consciously, some less consciously. And what this translates to mean is that really, essentially, our ultimate will is to surrender ourselves to God, is to have our lives express themselves as such, as manifestations of God and as of God's will, which translates into this meditation that we've been discussing in these past couple of episodes of having this intention in mind when we perform the Torah and mitzvahs, when we do God's will and we study God's wisdom, to unite our souls with the source of our souls, which is the source of all Jewish souls, and then ultimately have that unification of the source of Jewish souls with God Himself, which is what we term Yichud Kudsha B'richu U'Shchintei, the unification of God, the Holy One, blessed be He, and His Shechina, which is the source of the souls of all of Israel. So with that being said, let's get into the text and see how the Alter Rebbe explains this. And we are still in the middle of chapter 41 of Likkutei Amarim. So the Alter Rebbe begins today, and he references this idea of the unity of of all souls, and the way that they're encompassed in the light of God, so that they are one, which is what we've been discussing in the past couple of episodes. So he says that this unity, this is something that every single Jewish person truly does desire in true truth, completely, with their entire heart, and in every Jewish soul. Out of, where does this come from? This is from this innate love that is hidden within the recesses of every single Jewish person's heart, to cleave to God and to not be separate from God, and to not be like their own entity, or God forbid, to be different from God's unity and oneness in any way, any which way, even if this requires mesiras nefesh, even if this requires self-sacrifice, meaning a sense of really literally sacrificing the sense of self, of the like what happens at the end of a person's life. The Alter Rebbe says here, at the end of 70 years. Thank God nowadays people live a lot longer than 70 years, so I'm going to up that to at the end of, I'm not even going to put a limit on it. So, at the end of a person's life, that's when a person's godly soul really reunites with God. So the Alter Rebbe basically is saying is that this is actually the true desire of every Jewish soul, is to unite with God to such an extent that they want to unite with God, even if it requires total sacrifice of the self, to the point that their self expires. That it does not, and after that time, this is, so the Alter Rebbe is saying that this does happen after a person expires, where at that point, a person no longer has any bodily concerns at all, and rather its thoughts are totally united and totally vested in the letters of the Torah and prayer, which are the words of God and His thoughts, and they become like totally unified. And this is why we see that the entire, what it is that the souls in Gan Eden, in heaven, so to speak, are involved with, is just in being involved in Torah study. Like, they're not worried about paying bills, they're not worried about taking a shower or any kind of like bodily concerns like that. It's all of those things go away. So once a person passes away, they're kind of living in this more true reality of really realizing their priorities, which is truly to be unified with God. And this is explained in the Gemara and the Zohar, the Alter Rebbe says. And the Alter Rebbe says that it's explained there in the Gemara and the Zohar that in Gan Eden, then what is it that the souls get enjoyment from? It's not out of physical pleasures and things like that, but rather it's out of their understanding and about their absorption in the light of God. And then now the Alter Rebbe says that this is why it was instituted that we should say in the beginning of the Birchas HaShachar, this is the morning prayers that we say in the morning, before we start praying, we say this prayer, Elokai neshama shenatata bi Torah hi ata nafachta bi. So it's a whole prayer. So basically, what the point that the Alter Rebbe is bringing out here is it means, God, you imbued within me a soul, and you blew this soul within me. And then it goes on and it says, V'ata atid litzla mimeni, and in the future you will take it away from me. And so what the Alter Rebbe is pointing out here is it says that these things go together, that since it is God that gave us this soul, and here it's referring to the godly soul, and then since in the future you will take it away from me, thus from now on, I'm going to live with this awareness, and I'm going to give it over to you and return it to you and unite it with you in true unity. As it says, and here the Alter Rebbe cites Tehillim, chapter 25, verse 1, Elokecha Hashem nafshi esa. To you, God, I lift my soul. Meaning, through this, of connecting my thoughts to your thoughts and my speech to your speech with the letters of the Torah and prayer, and specifically when we address God in the second person, like when we say, blessed are you, and things like that. Like we say, Baruch atah, like blessed are you. That's like the beginning of every bracha that we say. So basically, that's the end of the section. So basically, just to summarize that last section, is the Alter Rebbe is really pointing out this idea that there's the reason for us saying, when we say this prayer in the morning before our morning prayers, of Okai Neshama, when we declare this awareness of the fact that God gave us this godly soul as like a present, and God is in the future going to take it away from us, it's like really promoting this awareness that we should not take it for granted. This godly soul that we have within us is a gift to us by God. It's actually on temporary loan, and eventually he's going to take it out of our bodies. So any part of us that identifies with this godly soul will come to this awareness of the facts that it's really God's. And when we realize that it's really God's, then we'll really want to realize that we want to orient ourselves towards him, and that the godly soul really, its true self is to be encompassed and within him, and to be united with him and not separate from him, and really to not have a sense of separation, of separate self, of a separate self-identity. And so then this awareness will translate into every time we involve ourselves in Torah study or in doing mitzvahs and things like that, we're really going to be trying to align our thoughts and our speech and every part of ourselves with God, so that there really will be no difference, and like really come to this like unity and this like resonance between our soul and God. So that is it for today. So it was a little bit longer today, and I hope that gave you a little bit of a deeper insight into this concept of becoming one with the universe, and how we can now understand that it's more than becoming one with the universe. Ultimately, what we want to try to do is become one with the creator of the universe, and that even if this might not feel so natural to us at first, and might go against our innate sense of self and ego and individuality, there is a part of us deep within ourselves which was gifted to us by God, or rather loaned to us by God, which is our godly soul, that actually does want this, and actually this is its striving and awareness, even if we're not totally aware of it at the time. So that's it for today, and we will continue tomorrow, and I will speak to you then. Thanks for listening to the It Is Taught podcast, hosted by Sarit Switzer. This podcast is dedicated in loving memory of my maternal grandfather, Avraham Yitzchak ben Binyamin HaKohen of blessed memory. Music by Shoshana. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the show, please share it with others and subscribe on YouTube, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to leave us a 5-star review. To find out more about the It Is Taught project, including more information on my soon-to-be published book, please visit our website, itistaught.com. To catch the latest from me, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Looking forward to speaking with you tomorrow, and until then, have a great day.